young, healthy woman, and they're retrieved from her. They are fertilized in a laboratory with husband or partner, and in some cases, in fact many cases, donor sperm. Those are then developed into embryos over 3 or 5 days. Those resultant embryos are later transferred into a recipient's uterus. A recipient could be the woman who wishes to have a child herself, and in some instances it could be the uterus of a surrogate, but that's a whole other topic on its own. The legalities around egg donation are the National Health Act regulates egg donation in South Africa or speaks to it. Therefore, anonymous egg donation is legal in South Africa. There is something called known donation, where the recipient and the donor know each other or have some kind of prior relationship with each other. That is a more complex scenario that we won't be covering today. I'll be focusing on anonymous egg donation. That is the most common and I guess simpler form of egg donation in South Africa. We are also regulated and accredited as an egg donor agency by SASREG, that Dr. Biko, who gave our introduction earlier, and Dr. Deo has spoken briefly about. SASREG is an ethical body that ensures that we are following all the rules, the laws, the regulations around egg donation. Some of the requirements or regulations around egg donation in South Africa are that it is anonymous, so the donor does not know who the recipient is, and the recipient does not know who the donor is, although we do provide some information that recipient can choose a donor from without making the donor identifiable personally. Donors are also compensated for their time and effort. Generally, donors are compensated between 8 and 10,000 rand in South Africa. That is clinic dependent. Most of in fact, everything that I will be speaking about will be in general terms, so that you have an idea of what is involved in an egg donation cycle. But the specifics are clinic and doctor dependent, so I would encourage you to speak to your doctor about what they require. So who would benefit from egg donation? Women who are menopausal will likely need an egg donor, or if you have poor ovarian reserve, which Cara spoke about earlier, you would need to use an egg donor. Some women are born without functioning embryos, so that might be a condition like Turner syndrome. Women who have recurrent miscarriages that Dr. Tshwara spoke about, if having excluded all the different possibilities that she spoke about, egg donation may be your next resort. Women who have had their ovaries surgically removed, and also women who've had chemotherapy or some other type of cancer treatment that has disturbed or caused their ovaries to no longer function, may be in need of an egg donor. We also serve women who have inheritable conditions like hemophilia or Huntington's, or some other sex-linked genetic condition where they will need to use the eggs of someone else. What we're seeing more and more is women needing egg donors because of advanced maternal age. Advanced maternal age is not a term that I really enjoy or like, because it makes one sound old. But by definition, there isn't really a formal definition of what that is, but generally it's anyone over the age of 35, and certainly a woman in her 40s would be deemed of advanced maternal age. So we treat women, or generally speaking, clinics will treat women with egg donation up until the age of 55. That is generally the absolute cutoff. The first cutoff is at the age of 50. Your doctor may require you to go for other investigations or refer you to a physician who will send you for an ECG or a mammogram and some other tests to determine, not to qualify you for egg donation as such, but to ensure that you are healthy to carry a healthy pregnancy to term, because we don't ever want you to have any type of treatment that will compromise your own health, let alone the health of a future pregnancy. So all these conditions that I've mentioned that may require you to use an egg donor will be ultimately determined by your fertility specialist. They would prescribe the treatment that you need once they have assessed you and sent you for investigations. So Egg Donation South Africa, which is who I represent, we're an egg donation agency who's responsible for the recruitment and support of egg donors during their egg donation cycle. So the simplest way to explain what we do and our part in the team of your fertility treatment is we function similar to an HR recruitment company. So we recruit egg donors, young women who are interested in becoming egg donors or want to become egg donors. We educate them on everything that is involved from start to finish and make them available to you as a recipient on our database to choose from. We also ensure that an important part of what we do as an agency is to ensure that the instructions that the clinic gives to the egg donor are followed to the best of the donor's ability. We're also the first port of call or line of contact for emotional support and of the donor during her egg donation cycle, and also giving her information that the clinic has already given her. It's important to us that we provide or we make the process as much as we can a comfortable and positive one. I always say to our egg donors that we don't just want the egg donation process to be a positive, happy one for the recipient who has a baby at the end of the day. We want it to be an opportunity for empowerment and understanding, empowerment in the sense of understanding how your body works. There is a difference between sexual education and reproductive health. So knowing your reproductive health is a part of that process of being an egg donor. On the recipient side, we, of course, as I said, we compile egg donor profiles that we then make available to you and assist you in choosing an egg donor. The information that you have on your egg donor is, as I said earlier, it is anonymous, but we provide extensive profiles that have a donor's phenotypical features, so eye color, hair color, weight, complexion, their ethnicity, their race. We also include photos of the donor up until the age of 10. The age of 10 because we don't want the donor to be identifiable by anyone, but we do want you to have an idea of what the donor looks like, because choosing a donor that is going to fit into your family as a recipient is something that might be important to you as a recipient. Some recipients are not at all interested in what the donor looks like. We've had recipients in the past who choose donors that are of different races to them even. It just differs from person to person and what's important to you. The other information that we provide in our donor profiles is the donor's personal medical history, her fertility history, if she's on any medication. We look at the donor's academic background, what she's good at, what she's bad at, because those things can be genetic to some degree. For instance, if you are a scientist who loves the outdoors, Perhaps you and your partner are like that, or if you're a single woman, you are like that. You might not necessarily want to have a child who just wants to paint all day and be indoors and read a book, because that's not necessarily your personality style. Those things are, it's not an exact science as some of our colleagues have spoken about, but it is a good indication for you to know what kind of donor you are choosing. We provide information on the donor's personal medical history as well as her family's medical history. If we look at the donor, her parents, siblings, as well as their grandparents, the donor's grandparents. These are everyone's family. Even as we sit here, everyone has something. One of the doctors that I worked with said something to me once that I never forgot. He said, everyone has to die at some point, and they die of something. It sounded quite harsh at the time, but it is the truth. So when looking at your donor's information, it's important to be open-minded in terms of what you're looking for or what you are getting. Dr. Deo spoke earlier about the tendency to look at the fertility process in general like a designer baby. You want a child who is like this, like that, but that is not realistic. And certainly if you're in a heterosexual relationship, or in any relationship, in fact, you're not necessarily excluding or including your partner because his grandmother had heart disease, or because, I don't know, you have to be realistic in terms of the donors that are available and what their profiles look like. The profiles are actually quite fun and interesting because we have all shapes and sizes and all manner of people, and it's actually quite a privilege to be a part of that process and to come in contact with women who are willing to commit themselves to such a selfless act and help another person become a parent. I always say that as egg donation is a sisterhood of grace, because as a recipient, you are receiving the greatest gift possibly, that your greatest desire from someone that you will never know and never meet. But it's a very tangible gift, and I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful opportunity both for the recipient and the egg donor. So who are the egg donors? They are women between the ages of 19 and 32, 32 being the very top end of egg donors that we will accept. The reason being is we're looking for women whose ovaries and ovarian function are still very much in order. So that is our age bracket. As I mentioned, egg donation is anonymous in South Africa. Donors are compensated. And once you have looked at all of our available profiles, you would send us confirmation of which donor you would like. You would have been introduced to us by your doctor, or you can contact us independently. If you don't yet have a doctor, we can introduce you to a doctor in your city where you would like to have treatment. But once you've chosen a donor, the clinic would have you fill in a medical questionnaire for you and your partner if you haven't already done so. And most clinics will require you to pay a deposit. Once that deposit is paid, that covers about generally 60 to 80% of your treatment upfront. Once that deposit is paid, your donor would then get screened by your treating doctor. The donors are the donor screening. The screening that's done on the donors is multifold. So it's first the appointment with a doctor who would do a pelvic ultrasound scan, similar to a very early pregnancy scan. If you've been pregnant before, so it would be the ultrasound scan to determine that her ovaries and uterus are functioning as they should clinically. They would send her for blood tests. The blood test done on egg donors is infectious screening, so HIV, hepatitis, and some urine tests and some other infectious disease screening. They might also do some hormonal tests depending on what the doctor sees on the ultrasound. At that same appointment, your donor will most likely be shown how to use her injections or the medication that would be used to stimulate her ovaries. And after that appointment is done, your donor would also see our clinical psychologist. We have many psychologists that we work with. Fortunately, there are more and more psychologists entering the fertility field, which is good not just for the donors, but also for patients who are seeking fertility treatment, to see a psychologist. The psychologist's role in screening the donor is to assess where the donor is emotionally and psychologically at the point in time that they are looking at receiving eggs from or giving their eggs to a clinic or to a recipient. We want to ensure that the donor is in a stable emotional state, that there is no coercion, and that she is stable enough to go through and complete the donation process from start to finish. The psychologist will also look at the donor's psychosocial history and that of her family, what sort of, if any, mental disorders or mental illnesses in the family. The sort of mental illnesses that would exclude someone from being an egg donor is things like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, because those have a higher genetic component or heritability inherent in them. So that's the role of the psychologist and the screening that is done on the donor. Once that screening is completed, your donor would then receive a treatment plan. You would also receive a treatment plan from your clinic. The treatment plan would tell the donor when to start her medication, if she's been put on the oral contraceptive, when to stop the pill, and when to start her medication. It's quite a comprehensive instructions from the clinic. You would also receive the same as a recipient. So while the donor is being screened, your own process as a recipient is happening parallel to that. Your doctor would have most likely sent you for you and your partner, if there is a partner involved, for infectious screening and for some hormonal screening as well. And they may want to do other investigations or a procedure on you. And your partner would also go for some screening, which would include a semen analysis, which Bart spoke about earlier. All in all, the screening and the preparation on the recipient side is to ensure that you are healthy enough or in a healthy position to receive an embryo and carry and sustain a healthy pregnancy as best as possible. You would also, as a recipient, start taking medication. And so those two processes of the donor side, the screening as well as the medication, is happening parallel to the recipient. And you're both synchronized for the all-important egg retrieval and the embryo transfer. The donors are, after being issued with their medication and shown how to use it, they take their medication for about 10 days. They have about 3 follicle scans or ultrasound scans during the 10 days of approximately 10 days of medication with the doctor to ensure that the eggs and follicles are developing nicely. And 2 days, or generally 2 days after their final scan or third scan, they will be booked in for their egg retrieval. The egg retrieval is done under a conscious sedation, so it's a very mild general anesthetic. It's done with an ultrasound probe that has a small needle attached to the head, and it's a very simple procedure that takes about 15 minutes. It's called an egg retrieval or an ovum pickup. Those eggs are then retrieved, fertilized in the laboratory with the sperm, which your partner would need to make their sperm deposit at the clinic on the morning of the egg retrieval generally, or freeze it beforehand if your partner lives in a different city to where you're having treatment. Or if you're using a donor sperm, a sperm donor, the sperm would obviously already be available at the clinic. We do also have a sperm bank. If you are in need of a sperm donor, you can chat to me later about that. But your donor's eggs are fertilized in the laboratory with the sperm, and 3 or 5 days later, you would have your embryo transfer, and that would be the final end of the process. 10 days after your embryo transfer, you would have your pregnancy test, which would hopefully be positive. Stats have been spoken about earlier. Egg donation stats are very encouraging. So I think a woman in her 40s, the chances of her falling pregnant is 11%, if I'm not mistaken, or about 11%, all things being equal. With egg donation, the chances of you falling pregnant, the success rate for egg donation is anything between 65 to 75%. I've even heard of as high as 80% for egg donation. That's obviously clinic dependent, and also sperm factor plays a role in the chances of you falling pregnant. So that's very encouraging to know that the success rate is so high, and your egg quality is your low egg quality is taken off the table, and it's the egg quality of the donor that you are looking at. Yes, that's egg donation from start to finish.